Welcome back to the channel. I'm Javi, and today we are diving into this penny stock called Senseonics. They are focused on continuous glucose monitoring, and today, or a few days ago, they announced some great news from the FDA. So stick around and let's dive right in. Before we dive into the stock, I do want to cover why I got into the sector in the first place. I do work at an ICU or intensive care unit where we take care of critically ill patients, especially complications on whatever disease process they have. So in this instance, it would be type 1 or type 2 diabetes, where patients would develop DKA or diabetes ketoacidosis or HHS, hyperglycemic hyperosmolar state. And I provided a quick snippet of how they would present to the ICU. And usually for management, we'll give them insulin, fluids, monitor labs, and essentially start teaching them a bunch of stuff about diabetes and how to manage it at home. And they would usually get discharged with all the medical equipment that they need at the hospital. With this experience, I definitely noticed that patients struggle to check their sugars for multiple reasons. For one, the frequency that they have to check it is quite a lot. So for type 2 diabetes, for example, they have to check it at least 4 times a day. One before breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and usually before they go to sleep. So that's 4 pokes on the finger. And sometimes if they get symptomatic, if they get hypoglycemic or hyperglycemic, high sugar, low sugar, they have to check it a little more frequent. And if it's very severe, they have to get hospitalized to get managed by a hospital provider. Number two, it can be painful to check your sugar because they have to use a lancet or a little needle that makes a tiny hole on your finger. And imagine doing that very frequent. It can be very tiresome and very painful. Sometimes patients do forget to check as well, especially younger patients who are newly diagnosed or slightly older patients who are either getting dementia or they're just forgetful in general. That's where I see the benefits of the continuous glucose monitor because you can share your glucose with other people in your family or a friend. So if you do hypoglycemic and you go into a coma of sorts, then people will be able to help you out and they can call 911 on your behalf. The benefit of Eversense specifically or Senseonics is that it has multiple systems that you can use to check it for a long-term period. Moving on to the stock, and the reason I actually wanted to make this video was due to this article right here. So on September 17, 2024, Senseonics announced that they were FDA approved for their Eversense 365, which is their single sensor that provides a whole year of continuous glucose monitoring versus the 10 to 14 days with the short-term continuous glucose monitors. Those include Dexcom, Medtronic, and the Freestyle Libre. They are expected to launch their Eversense 365 in the fourth quarter of 2024. And it is important to note that they are approved for type 1 and type 2 diabetes for patients 18 years or older. Getting this approval for the Eversense 365 is significant because now patients can focus more on just the managing of the diabetes alone. So like focusing on their diet, exercising, instead of being worried about the machine that's helping them track it. So the short-term ones that you have to worry about every 10 to 14 days, you have to change the sensors, the stickers. You also still have to check your finger stick. With the Eversense 365, you do still have to check your sugar at least once a week. So that's important to know. In this article, they also mentioned that it'll help lower your A1C. That's applicable to all continuous glucose monitors as well. Another thing to point out from this article is that they are in partnership discussions with various pump manufacturers to continue the progress as they look to leverage the Eversense 365's unique potential to simplify life with integrated automated insulin delivery systems, or AID is what they call it. Imagine if Senseonics actually has a partnership with Medtronic or something, or Tandem Diabetes. I did pull up Tandem Diabetes here. They do have a market cap of 2.9 billion. And imagine if they buy them out or something where now they can integrate a patient's continuous glucose monitor and the insulin pump. That essentially creates a very convenient way to maintain a patient's insulin levels and glucose levels at a stable rate, and that will help lower their A1C levels. They did provide some quick bullet points on why the Eversense 365 is beneficial. It is long lasting, You only get to change it once every year compared to every 10 to 14 days with the short term CGM systems. It is very dependable. The sensor survivability across 12 months reduces the burden of data interruptions from frequent short term CGM sensor failures or changes. No more wasted sensors. A tiny sensor that rests comfortably under the skin means that it cannot be knocked off, minimizing the inconvenience and cost of regular replacements. Alerts can be trusted. It's exceptionally accurate consistently for 1 year, and it has no false alarms for compression lows during the night. Maximum comfort, a gentle silicone based adhesive that can be changed daily and causes almost no skin reactions. More freedom, the only CGM with a removable transmitter which can be easily taken on and off without wasting a sensor or adding a warm up period. Improved discretion on body vibration alerts keep patients notified even when their mobile phone is out of sight. Finally, Essentia expects to initiate the US launch of the Eversense 365 in the fourth quarter of 2024, with work ongoing to transition coverage availability in order to facilitate immediate access to as many users as possible. Eversense 365 has been cleared as an integrated CGM system, indicating that it can integrate with compatible medical devices, including insulin pumps, as part of an automated insulin delivery system. Eversense 365 is exceptionally well suited to address common limitations of AID systems, and the companies are advancing partnership discussions with various pump manufacturers. Overall, a very great article, and I think this will potentially save the company. Right now, the stock is not doing great, but I am buying the stock at the moment. It is currently down 25% because I got in around 0.49. It is a risky stock still because they are still in the development phase. I pulled up my Senseonics holdings. As of right now, I am down 26% or $13,000. I do have an average price of 0.49, so I bought when it took that 31% increase when they announced their FDA approval. They do have a market cap of 196.8 million right now. They do not pay a dividend. They are, because they are still in development. They're not profitable yet. My hopes for the stock is that it either does really well on its own, it sells a lot of product, or I do hope that it does get bought out by a bigger company such as Medtronic, Dexcom, Freestyle Libre, and I believe that's Google. So if they can get a deal or they can get bought out, that will be the most ideal for the stock. Looking at Senseonics income statement for 2019, they had a revenue of 21 million and a net income of negative 115 million, which is a drop of 22%. 2020, 5 million and net was 175 million negative, which is a drop of negative 51%. 2021, they made a revenue of 13 million with a net income of negative 302 million. So that was terrible. And 2022, they made a revenue of 16.3 million and a net income of 142 million, which was a 146% increase. And the revenue increased by 19% on that year. For 2023, they took a dive again. Their revenue was 22 million and their net income was negative 60 million. If we zoom in for the quarterly, for March 24, they had a revenue of 5 million and a net income of negative 18.8 million, which is a significant drop. For June 24, they had a revenue of 4.8 million and net income of negative 20 million, which was an improvement actually. An earnings per share of negative 0.03. And let's see what March was. It was also negative 0.03, or a 35% increase from the prior year. Moving on to their cash flow, which I actually think it's getting better. For 2019, they had a net change in cash of negative 40 million. For 2020, a net change in cash of negative 77 million. 21, 15 million, which was positive. 22, 2.3 million. And 2023, which is one of the highest thus far, was 39 million. Eversense has a 413 billion market opportunity. That's the total cost of diabetes in the United States. And approximately 500,000 hyperglycemic and hypoglycemic events annually that result in hospitalization costs over $25,000 per event. They are targeting multiple potential revenue streams. For in the short term, they expect the sale of the Eversense CGM product and Eversense RPM services. Long-term expansion opportunities include the insertion fees, outcome-based reimbursements for CGM plus RPM solutions, and extended RPM services. They do have a partnership with Mercy Health. They have an operating revenue of 8 billion, net assets of 4.9 billion, and 30 hospitals, 872 physicians and outpatient practices, 2,425 physicians, 2,200 advanced practice providers, and 3.4 million outpatient visits, and 731,000 emergency room visits. Eversense does have two other pipelines down the line. They have the Gemini and Freedom. So Gemini is just a CGM transmitter, and you pretty much have to tap whatever device you have to get your glucose levels. And the target audience for this system is patients who are using insulin and non-insulin patients. The Freedom system is essentially the same thing, but this time it just transmits it to your device without you needing to tap the continuous glucose monitor. They are both 1 year and one calibration each. No transmitter included in the system. It has direct communication between the sensor and the handheld device. And the target audience for the Freedom system and the Gemini system are both insulin patients and non-insulin patients. Revenue recognition by sales channel. So the current system right now is Senseonics, Ascensia, and the distributors send it to the healthcare provider, and the patient gets it at the clinic, and that takes about 90 to 120 days. And channel 2, pretty much Senseonics sends it to the hospital and the healthcare provider, and they pretty much insert it at the hospital, and the patient discharges with it within 30 to 60 days. So I do see that being very beneficial, and it will drastically increase the sales for the company, because if somebody who was diagnosed and or they had complications and so they end up at the hospital, they can get a system right as they leave, and they know for sure that it's going to last the whole year, and that patient can go back to the hospital or a clinic. Or I could see this working as well, where they can send a provider to the patient's home, because there are systems already in place like that, such as hospice or the company Liquid IV, where they send a nurse or a provider to go start an IV, and they give patients their fluids or antibiotics or whatever they need. And I could see that same system working for Senseonics, because you can just send somebody and they insert it or renew your continuous glucose monitor. Or if something goes wrong with the current one, you could send out a nurse to go diagnose what's happening. Granted, these are just my predictions. I'm not even sure they have any partnerships like that where they can send a nurse to the patient's home. So take this with a grain of salt, basically. Here they have a chart for the transition to the Eversense 365. For quarter 3 24, they're going to take a big hit, a one-time charge, because they will transition their manufacturing to the 365-day product. And for quarter 4 24, that's when their inventory levels will be reset in quarter 4 with the 365-day product. This is Senseonics' global patient base. For 2023, they had about 4,000 patients. For 2024, they're expecting about 6,000. And 2025, they expect to pretty much double their 2024 number to 12,000 patients. Senseonics included their key financial targets. So they have a revenue share percent of 72.5% to 67.5%. Senseonics revenue 22 to 24 million, and gross margin of 10% to 15%. Operating expenses of 77.5 to 82.5 million. Cash projections for 2024, cash use in operations is projected to be 70 million. And here on the right side, they have a 2025 and beyond, with the 365-day product being commercialized and continued emphasis on our hospital system strategy. We anticipate patients and the associated revenue to approximately double in 2025. So that's great news. So that pretty much concludes this video. I do think Eversense has a lot of potential. It is still a very small company, so at any moment it could go bankrupt. Don't invest all your eggs in this one stock. Definitely diversify. It is a small portion of my portfolio. I am currently down 26% right now, but hopefully with their innovations, maybe they will get acquired. If you liked the video, if it was helpful in any way, please like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next one.